The world has always admired Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, as the very embodiment of elegance, grace, and quiet strength. To the public eye, she is a shining beacon of composure, the radiant smile that lights up royal events, the poised figure who moves through palaces and public appearances with effortless dignity. Millions have fallen in love with her gentle warmth, admiring how she seems to carry the weight of the royal family on her shoulders without ever faltering. She is, to many, the perfect princess in a modern fairy tale, a young woman whose life seems scripted by destiny, entwined forever with the British monarchy in a storybook romance. Yet beneath that polished, meticulously crafted public image lies a story few have ever dared to tell, a truth Kate has guarded quietly for years. It is the story of her parents' marriage, a tale far from the picture-perfect ideal that the media and society imagined. It is a story filled with tension, heartbreak, and an unspoken pain so profound it left invisible scars on her childhood and shaped the woman she would become. When Kate closes her eyes and drifts back to her earliest memories, she finds herself wandering once again through the rolling green hills and winding quiet lanes of Bucklebury, a picturesque village in the English countryside. The family home, with its neat garden and classic brick facade, looked serene and welcoming to the many neighbors and friends who visited over the years. To them, it was the picture of a happy middle-class family life, full of laughter and love. But for young Kate, the house was often anything but a sanctuary. The warmth and comfort one expects from the place called home was frequently overshadowed by an almost tangible tension that clung to the walls like a silent specter. She could still remember, with painful clarity, the way the entire atmosphere shifted the moment she crossed the threshold after a long day at school. Outside, the world had been alive with the joyful chatter of children playing, the carefree freedom of laughter echoing through the fresh air. The late afternoon sun cast golden light over the trees, and the distant hum of life was filled with promise and warmth. But all of that vanished the instant she stepped inside her family home. The vibrant energy of the outside world seemed to evaporate, replaced by a heavy, suffocating quiet that settled like a thick blanket, pressing down on her chest with a weight so tangible it made each breath feel shallow and strained. It was not the gentle silence of calm or peace. No, this silence was something far darker. It was the silence of broken things left unsaid, of wounds that had never fully healed, and of conversations that were carefully avoided to prevent reopening old hurts. The stillness was not empty, it was filled with invisible cracks, tiny fractures of disappointment, bitterness, and regret that spread beneath the surface like a spiderweb, threatening to tear apart everything they touched. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for some hidden storm to finally break loose. The air felt thick and cold, stifling and unwelcoming, like a room frozen in time, haunted by the ghosts of arguments never voiced and feelings never expressed. Even as a young child, Kate could sense the fragility that lay beneath the polished exterior of her parents' relationship. It was in the way their smiles, so often painted on for appearances, never quite reached their eyes when they were together. The eyes that looked tired, guarded, and distant. She noticed how their footsteps on the creaking wooden floors deliberately avoided crossing paths, how their voices, when they did speak in the same room, seemed to carefully skirt around each other, like two people dancing on opposite ends of a stage, too afraid to draw too close. During family gatherings, when visitors were present and polite conversations masked the truth, Kate could feel the subtle but unmistakable chill in the air, a frost that clung to her parents' interactions, making the room feel colder than it should have been. It was not the explosive tension that bursts out in loud fights or dramatic confrontations. Rather, it was a quiet, persistent strain, a tension that whispered and lingered in the empty spaces between words, in the way a glance would falter and quickly look away, in the awkward silences that stretched too long. It was a pressure that weighed heavily on her young shoulders, making her feel small and powerless in a house where love seemed to have quietly slipped away, dissolving into the cracks and cold corners where no one dared to reach for it anymore. The house would feel so cold, she recalled softly, her voice trembling with the weight of the memory. Not because of the weather, but because my parents, they weren't the same people I saw at school or on special occasions. There was this invisible wall between them, a silence that was loud enough to drown out everything else. Dinner times were the hardest. While the table was set with care and the trappings of a happy family meal were there, the reality was starkly different. Michael and Carol Middleton sat on opposite ends, eyes carefully avoiding each other. The words they spoke were polite and minimal, but the tension crackled like static electricity between them. Kate, still a small child, tried to smile and join in conversations, but she could feel the weight of the unspoken, the disappointment, the bitterness, the distance. Once, unable to contain her confusion, she had asked her mother, "Why don't you and Dad talk anymore?" Carol's answer was a soft, forced smile and a vague, "Sometimes grown-ups have things they don't want to say." That response only deepened Kate's sense of helplessness. She wondered if somehow she or her siblings were to blame for the coldness, if there was something she could do to fix the brokenness she sensed but could not understand. Michael, once a confident and charming businessman with a thriving courier company, had changed over the years. Financial pressures gnawed at his spirit, making him increasingly withdrawn and volatile. Friends and neighbors spoke in whispers of a man who, beneath his composed exterior, struggled with frustration and occasional bursts of anger over trivial matters. It wasn't the kind of shouting matches one might expect. Instead, it was a simmering tension that could flare in a glance or a clipped word. One night during Kate's teenage years, she had awoken to voices raised in the dark. Hidden behind the doorframe, she heard her parents exchanging low, bitter accusations. Their words were sharp knives, blaming each other for failures, for unhappiness, for what had gone wrong. The sound of Carol's quiet sobs pierced her heart, and for the first time, Kate felt truly alone, trapped between love and despair. "I wanted to scream, to tell them to stop hurting each other, and us," Kate said later. "But I was frozen, too scared to make a sound." Growing up amidst this quiet war waging within the walls of her family home, Kate quickly learned to adopt a mask of calm and control. It was a shield she fashioned carefully and wore every day, a protective armor against the chaos she could neither escape nor fix. At school, she was known as the mature, thoughtful girl, the one who quietly excelled in her studies, who listened more than she spoke, and who led her friends with a gentle kindness that seemed effortless. Teachers admired her dedication and poise, often praising her as someone destined for great things. To the outside world, she was composed and unflappable, the dependable friend who could be counted on. But those who knew her more intimately, the few who truly saw beyond the surface, understood that this perfection was fragile. Beneath her serene exterior lay cracks, invisible to most but glaring to those who paid close attention. Kate always seemed a little distant, a close school friend once confided, like she was carrying something unbearably heavy inside her chest. She smiled, yes, but sometimes that smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It wasn't always real. There was a sadness, a weight she hid behind that perfect mask. By the time she reached her teenage years, that weight grew heavier, and the role she had assumed within her family became painfully clear. With Pippa and James still young and more vulnerable to the tensions around them, Kate felt a crushing responsibility settle upon her shoulders. She became the unspoken caretaker, the perfect daughter who was expected to be strong, reliable, and unshakable, the one who held everything together when the foundation beneath them threatened to crumble. Showing any sign of weakness was simply not an option. She understood instinctively that if she allowed her own pain to surface, if she cracked or faltered, the fragile peace that existed would shatter entirely, sending shockwaves through the already fragile family. So she buried her feelings deep inside, pushing her emotions into a locked box where no one could reach them. She threw herself wholeheartedly into her studies, chasing academic success as both a distraction and a refuge. School became a sanctuary, a place where she could control her world, where expectations were clear and measured, and where she could momentarily escape the complicated emotions waiting at home. She also sought solace in her social life, engaging in friendships and activities that allowed her fleeting moments of laughter and normalcy. Yet, even in those moments, a part of her remained guarded, reluctant to fully open up and risk being vulnerable. But when night fell and the world outside quieted, the weight of her family's struggles came crashing back with relentless force. The darkness became a mirror to her own loneliness, magnifying every fear and sorrow she tried so hard to suppress during the day. There were nights when she would lie awake, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, whispering prayers into the darkness. Prayers for a family that could simply be normal, for a love that wasn't tangled with hurt, for peace that didn't come at the cost of so much pain. The silence of those nights was heavy, filled with the sound of a heart aching for something she feared might never come. When news broke of her engagement to Prince William, the world rejoiced at the prospect of a modern fairy tale. Yet, for Kate, it was a bittersweet milestone. The joy of the announcement was shadowed by the intense glare of media scrutiny. Suddenly, every detail of her life and her family was open for public consumption. Scrutinized, dissected, and often misunderstood. Michael and Carol tried their best to present a united front, aware that their daughter's future depended on the strength of the family image. But behind closed doors, the pressure mounted. Arguments that had once been whispered in private grew louder, and cracks began to show more visibly. A source close to the family revealed, the strain was unbearable. Michael's frustration grew, Carol's sadness deepened. The house felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Kate found herself caught between two worlds, the demanding glamorous life of a royal bride-to-be, and the painful reality of a family falling apart. "I wanted to protect them, to keep our struggles hidden," she admitted. But the silence was suffocating. It felt like a prison. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a cold winter evening during the Christmas holidays, a time meant for warmth and family togetherness. Instead, the house was thick with unspoken anger. The quiet finally shattered when a sharp argument erupted at the dinner table. Voices rose, words turned to accusations, and the fragile mask of civility crumbled. Carol, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of anguish and heartbreak, suddenly pushed back her chair with a trembling hand and fled from the room. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, uneven and hurried, as she tried desperately to escape the suffocating weight of the moment. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks, betraying the strength she had tried so hard to maintain. Behind her, the air felt charged with a devastating finality, as if something irrevocable had just been set into motion. Michael remained seated, his posture rigid and unyielding, his face hardened into a grim mask that showed no hint of softness or regret. His eyes, cold and distant, stared blankly ahead, as if retreating into a place far away from the pain erupting around him. The man who was once the center of their family now seemed unreachable, a fortress of silence and bitterness. Kate stood frozen, caught in the middle of this violent rupture, watching the family she had long struggled to keep intact unravel before her very eyes. The walls that once sheltered her childhood now seemed to close in like a trap. A shattering pain gripped her chest, sharp, raw, and suffocating, a grief so deep it felt like it could consume her entirely. In that moment, something inside her broke, a fracture in her soul that she knew would never fully heal. "It was the moment I realized things might never be the same," Kate whispered to herself later, her voice trembling with the weight of that memory. That family, the one I had always dreamed of, the safe place where I imagined love would always hold us together, was breaking apart, crumbling right before my eyes. Her heart fractured in ways she could barely find the words to describe. It was a pain that felt both endless and invisible, one she had no choice but to carry silently. Yet despite the turmoil roiling inside, Kate's outward expression remained carefully composed. The girl who had learned from an early age to smile through tears, to keep her pain hidden beneath a serene mask, now smiled through heartbreak. She perfected the art of concealing her suffering, mastering the delicate balance of appearing calm and collected while her world quietly fell apart beneath her feet. This resilience, born from necessity, would become both her greatest strength and her heaviest burden, a secret shield she would carry with her far beyond the walls of that broken home. "I felt abandoned, not just by them, but by the family I believed in," she confessed. The weight of helplessness was a constant companion, and with it, waves of guilt crashed relentlessly. Why couldn't I fix this? Why was I powerless? There were times when her anguish morphed into anger. Anger at her parents for the rift, anger at herself for feeling powerless, and anger at the world for the unrelenting pressures she faced. Yet in the darkest moments, she found unexpected strength. Through it all, Prince William became her refuge. Their shared experiences, the relentless public scrutiny, the crushing expectations, forged an unbreakable bond. "William never judged me," Kate said softly. "He saw the real me, not just the Duchess or the future Queen." A palace insider shared, "William admired her resilience and vulnerability. Their relationship was built on trust, understanding, and unconditional love." As Kate navigated the storm within her family and the storm of public life, she also began to find hope. Her parents, despite everything, made attempts to heal. They sought family therapy, engaged in difficult conversations, and showed signs of willingness to reconcile. It was a slow and painful process, a family friend admitted, but they were trying for Kate's sake and for their own. Kate held on to the hope that love could still bind what pain had torn apart, though the scars remained visible beneath the surface. The ripple effect of her parents' struggles extended to her siblings as well. Pippa, known for her vivacious and bubbly public persona, carried a quieter burden beneath the smiles. A close friend noted, "Pippa learned to protect herself early on. Her strength is quiet but real." James Middleton, more open and candid, spoke publicly about his mental health struggles, shedding light on the impact family challenges can have on well-being. "Family is complicated," he told reporters. "We're not perfect, but we love each other." Throughout this, the royal family remained a discreet yet steady source of support. William and his brother Harry understood the complexities of family difficulties all too well. A palace insider revealed, "They have been pillars for Kate, offering strength and comfort away from the public eye." Though the monarchy respects their privacy publicly, behind closed doors there is an undeniable warmth and solidarity. Finally, Kate made a bold decision to share her story. Her openness about the challenges in her family has resonated with countless people who suffer in silence. "It's okay to not be okay," she said in a heartfelt address. "There is strength in vulnerability." Her honesty sparked a wave of conversations about mental health, family dysfunction, and the importance of seeking help. For many, Kate's courage provided hope and validation. Now, as she stands tall among the world's most recognized women, Kate embraces the imperfect, often painful reality of her past. "I've learned that families aren't perfect," she reflected quietly. "But love and understanding can heal even the deepest wounds." Kate's journey reminds us all that behind the glamour, behind the crowns and titles, are human hearts capable of pain, endurance, and incredible strength.